What should I pay for land rent is a question many producers ask themselves. There's no transparent market listing like what you would see for land sales. Both producers and landlords are reluctant to reveal land rental rates. Rents are highly dependent on land productivity and competition for land rent in that area. The only true way to know what land is renting for is to test the market by advertising. Renting land has become popular recently with the increase in land prices over the last decade. Renting land is much easier from a cash flow perspective, as renting land reduces the amount of capital required by the producer and allows them to invest that capital elsewhere. Purchasing land for a value above the productive capacity of land is inefficient, at least in the first few years. Once equity is earned and debt is reduced, efficiency does increase. However, you must be aware that bought and paid for acres often subsidize purchased acres, often at a 3-to-1 ratio. There is a trade-off between cash profit and the paper equity gain in the land. Paper equity gain is nice, but generally only helps the producer in debt leveraging situations and once that land is sold. Hi, I'm Darren Bond, Farm Management Specialist with Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development. Today I'm discussing land rents in Manitoba from a producer's perspective. Please check out my other videos on land rent in Manitoba from a landlord's perspective and characteristics of good land rental agreements. Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development have developed a resource called RentPlan to assist producers to determine what they can pay for land rent on their farm. The premise is as follows. We need to determine the gross revenue, which is yield times price, and subtract our operating costs, labor costs, equipment costs, storage costs, our profit expectations, and this will leave us with the maximum amount of land rent that we can pay on our farm. It is important to determine your cost of production figures on your farm beforehand, so you can calculate the maximum you can pay for land rent. It's also important to consider your profit expectations in this calculation. Farming carries risk, and we can't afford to farm land where there is no profit to be realized. The RentPlan resource can be found on our website in either Excel or PDF format and in printed copies in your local Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development office. Here is a screenshot of the RentPlan resource. Here we would put in the types of crops we're growing on our farm, and we'd also put in the amount of acres for each crop that we are growing. As most land rents are multi-year agreements, we need to do a weighted averaging for crops we are growing. Otherwise, we could get skewed results if we're only calculating our maximum land rent payable amount based on our most or least profitable crops. Then we'll put in our probable yield along with our probable price, and we can put in our operating costs to determine our gross revenue per acre. In this example, our gross revenue is just over $400 per acre. Once we subtract our operating costs of just over $200 per acre, less labor, equipment costs, and storage costs, we come up with a maximum amount that we can pay before profit of just over $97 per acre. Now we have to remember to take away our profit expectation out of this because of the risk in farming. We can put in a range here, and this example uses $15 to $30 per acre for producer profit expectation, and that leaves us with the maximum that we can pay for land rent of between $67 and $82 per acre with an average of $75 per acre. These are just this example's numbers. This is why it's important for you to put in your own numbers in here so you can determine what you can pay on your own farm. There are some clear strengths to this process. It's a clear way to calculate what you can pay for rent on your farm. It allows you to measure profitability on rented land while making it hard to lie to yourself on the profitability of land that you're renting or looking at renting. Finally, it also gives landlords an appreciation for the margins and risk that producers are facing in today's economy. However, there are some limitations to this method. It doesn't factor in the land rental market influences, which can be quite extreme in some areas. Producer profit expectation is ambiguous. How much should a producer be expecting for profit? Does it change per area, or does it change for different crops? It's highly sensitive to yield and price estimates. Leases lasting longer than a year often require longer averaging estimations, which can be difficult to determine. That's why it's important that we have realistic projections when we calculate what we can pay for land rent on our farm. The amount that can be paid for land rent is quite sensitive to yield and price fluctuations. In this example, where canola and soybean price goes down by 50 cents per bushel, and we see a 25-cent per bushel decrease on the price of hard red spring wheat, we can see that we can pay nearly $20 per acre less on rented land than in the previous example. Considering the market and weather volatility we've seen in recent years, it's important to consider this risk when determining what you should pay for land rent. While farming practices and technology have improved drastically in the last decade, small yield and price fluctuations can dramatically alter the profitability on rented land. That's why it's important for producers to calculate their own costs of production and what they can pay for land rent on their own farm. That wraps up our discussion on land rent in Manitoba from a producer's perspective. I encourage you to contact us at manitoba.ca/agriculture, toll free at 1-844-769-6224. Follow us on Twitter at mbgovag. Thank you.